topic we've been discussing on trademark infringement is really related to the bigger topic, which is textual borrowing or plagiarism. And today we are very honored to have Dr. Jerry Rao with us, who, again, for the third time, who has been teaching scientific writing. And plagiarism is really a major topic in his course. So he is very generous to share his expertise with us. Let's welcome Dr. Rao.
I wouldn't say it's a major topic in my course, but it is a topic for all students who are going to be doing writing. And it does relate to what you've been talking about, because it's copying. And it's a question of how close a copy is okay and how close is not. And this is something you may not ever do trademark infringement, but you probably do some writing, and so this is a practical application of what you've been talking about. So the first question is, what constitutes plagiarism? And John Swales, who's a linguist, I'm drawing on his work for this and then giving some examples. And he says, first of all, one example of plagiarism is copying a paragraph as it is from the source without any acknowledgement. So if you copy a whole paragraph exactly the same, and you don't say that this comes from John Swales, then that's plagiarism. Okay, that's pretty clear. But what about if you copy a paragraph and you only make small changes? Like you replace a few verbs or adjectives. You use synonyms. Is that plagiarism? Yes. That also is plagiarism. So if I say copying a paragraph but making a few minor changes, like changing some of the verbs or replacing adjectives with other words meaning the same thing. It's the same thing, right? Okay, all I did is I took the small changes, I made minor changes, replacing, changing, synonyms, words meaning the same thing. I haven't really changed the meaning. I haven't really changed anything. That's still plagiarism, even though it's not exactly the same words. Okay? What about if I cut and paste a paragraph? I mean, I take part and I put it someplace else, using the sentences of the original, leaving one or two words out, putting one or two sentences in a different order. Okay, for instance, putting one or two sentences in a different order, or leaving one or two out, but basically cutting and pasting a paragraph from the original. Okay. This is essentially the same as this, it's just I've changed the order around. That's still plagiarism, because it's essentially I'm taking the author's words and calling them my own when they're really not. Okay? Then what's not plagiarism? How can you avoid plagiarism? If you take, for instance, a paragraph and you take short standard phrases from a number of sources and put them together with some words of your own, that's fine. Okay? If you're writing about law, about trademark infringement, you're going to use the word trademark infringement. You're going to use the definition of trademark infringement. Everybody's going to agree, basically, on that. That's what it means, short standard phrases. Okay? That's not a plagiarism, because you have to use those words. The key is you put them together in a different order and you add some words of your own. So if I said, there are short standard phrases in any field that will be used in similar ways in many different sources, but you should put them together in sentences and paragraphs using your own words and word order. Okay? I've added the fact that there are standard phrases in every field, that is the idea of a field, the idea that they're used in similar ways, and I put them together in a different order. This is okay. It's far enough from the original that I'm saying the same thing but not copying, not plagiarizing. Okay? Going a little bit further, even a little better, is paraphrasing a paragraph, rewriting with substantial changes in language and organization, detail, and examples. Okay? Now, that means either substantially more, substantially less, major changes in any area. So if I said, if you totally reorganize a paragraph, making it longer by adding examples, as I have in some of the categories suggested by Swales, or summarizing points to make it shorter, it's considered paraphrasing, which is not plagiarism. This is really what you're aiming for. This is mine, and nobody could call it John Swales, because I've taken it and I've totally reworked it, same ideas, but not even close to his words. It's just like, you know, somebody makes toothpaste, somebody makes toothpaste. It's going to be in a tube, it's going to be a white paste. Nobody's going to call that trademark infringement or copying a product. But there will be similarities, but it's sufficiently separate. Okay? Or the other way is simply to quote. Quote a paragraph, placing it in block format with the source cited. So if I quote it and I give the source, that's not plagiarism. Now, in the humanities and social science, sometimes you quote whole paragraphs, and you put it in a block where you indent both sides, and you put it in a block, no quotes. If you're in the sciences, it's rare to quote even a single sentence. Scientists just don't work that way. Scientists work on your own work rather than quoting someone else. Social sciences and humanities are much more dependent on quotes. So there are some differences in how that's used in different fields, but it's still not plagiarism if you do it. Okay, so in order to avoid plagiarism, the best thing that I tell my students is open the source, read it at least twice, make sure you understand it, make some notes in your own words, keep the keywords, those are the ones that you have to use in any field, but don't write full sentences, just write some keywords and maybe some of your own words that you think about when you read that. Then, after you do that, close the source and then write it yourself. Preferably, close it, set it aside, leave it for an hour, 2 hours a day, and then only look at your notes and rewrite it. That way you'll avoid plagiarism. Because if you read it, you close it, it's still in your memory. It will still come out very similar. But a day later, if you just write from your notes, you will not plagiarize, because you won't remember it that clearly, that it will be that close to the source. So that's the best way, practically, to avoid it. Okay, that's it. Very short.
I'd just like to respond to Dr. Jerry Rao's presentation a little bit. In terms of the second point he made, I think it echoes the two principles I made last week. One is uniqueness principle, the second is idiomatic principle. In other words, he said, retain key words. That's the idiomatic principle. Some expressions are frozen expressions or standard keywords. Those are used in your text without any problem. and that should be used that way. But he said, do not write in full sentences, because otherwise you will feel like copying the original sentences word by word into your notes. Then that violates uniqueness principle. That's already not your work, but somebody else's. I also want to respond to the very last point. He said, a good way to avoid plagiarism is to close the source, close the book, and wait for an hour or day or two before you write it down again. I think actually if you simply close the book, that will be sufficient, because in processing information, human beings have the ability to only grasp the proposition, the meaning, without remembering every word for word in detail. So as long as you close the source, you won't remember every word, in that unique sequence. You will create your own words to paraphrase that proposition or meaning. Okay, so that's my response to his response. All right, he is going to leave because he has another class, which is scientific writing. He's going to teach another class in an hour. So let's thank Dr. Rao again. Okay, actually, I was about to talk about 2 chapters from our required reading today, but let me first deal with the questions, and then if we have time, I will move on to the 2 chapters. Okay, there's only one question from last week, which is about the joint class presentation. Last week we only had 2 groups, but right after class, one, I think it's Lu Meijun, who told me that there might be the 3rd group, okay? So in other words, we will have 3 groups for our joint class presentations. Feel free to join one of those groups. We haven't decided who is going to join what yet, but today I'm going to ask you before you leave to give me 3 lists, okay? So decide on your own who is going to work with whom on those 3 groups. There's no limit on number of students who would like to participate in either, which one, but submit the final list of your group members before you leave today, number 1. Number 2, email me your group PPT by the 9th for feedback. I will make some corrections or give some comments for you to revise your PPT before you rehearse in our very last class next week. For all of you, the next assignment after you finish reflecting on Darlie versus Whiteman is to work on a 1-page outline of the joint class presentation with a short description of the division of labor. In other words, you don't have to all submit a PPT, upload your PPT. I think our system won't be able to take it. So instead, each one of you simply submits a 1-page outline of the PPT with a description of who did what division of labor. Because you submit individually, we all know, it's accountability. So we know, so I know at least who did what in this presentation. And we'll rehearse the 3 group presentations next week, which is our very last day of class. And then, after the final paper is due, you can go back. Those of you who attend the 12th, January 12th presentation, you can submit a short description of your presentation with 1 or 2 pictures to receive your extra bonus, okay? In other words, I created another space for those of you who attend the final joint class presentation to submit a 1-page thingy, just a a very brief description of your participation in the joint class presentation, and perhaps you take a picture of the presentation just to prove you were there, right? And if you submit that short description, you will receive your bonus 5 points. Of course, I will also see you during the conference, so I know you are there, right? Any questions about the presentation? I think Roya has some question. What's your question? Okay, let me now give you 5 minutes to, go into the groups that you'd like to join and give me a list of the names right now. And then when you come back after 5 minutes, we can continue our discussion on different topics.